right, so welcome everybody to Compassionating the Curriculum through Social Entrepreneurship. Our Really, this presentation is focused on how we are weaving our local education, economic, and social sectors together in ways that foster what we call compassionate change makers in both our town and gown communities. Our discussion is broken down into four major sections, or what Jacob and I like to say, the 4 C's: cultivation, co-creation, catalyzation, and conclusion. And there are 2 basic concepts that will flow through our talk, and they are weaving and compassion. And just real quick, weaving is this idea that when we're doing something in one area, be it the town or the gown, we're connecting those activities. So when we're doing one thing, we're moving along the other activities that we're participating in. So that's what we mean by weaving. And compassion is really taking the definition from my latest book, with HarperCollins, called The Compassionate Achiever. Define compassion as this kind of 360-degree holistic understanding of the problem or suffering of others, with a commitment to take action to address or alleviate that suffering or those problems. So those are the kind of 2 basic definitions in terms of what we call in debate topicality. Now, a quick hit on who we are. I am the Dean of the Cormier Honors College at Longwood University and the HarperCollins author of The Compassionate Achiever. And my fellow presenter is Professor Jacob Dolans. Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yep, Jacob Dolans, faculty in the Honors College, and I'm lucky enough to get to work for Dean Cook and teach courses in social entrepreneurship and innovation. So we wanted to start this presentation with an important acknowledgement of the peoples who lived on this land before our university or we were here. So really, I wanted to talk briefly about the Monacan and the Lumbee tribe, because they were the 2 groups of indigenous peoples that lived here and still live here and have been in a fight with the federal government for recognition for land that was stolen from them and being transplanted to other areas. So I think it's really important to acknowledge them and the culture in this community. The second community I want to acknowledge was the Free Blacks of Israel Hill, which was a 3-generation community of 150 freed slaves who worked in this region as entrepreneurs and innovators long before we had ever thought about these ideas. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge who was here before us and respect that and think about it in the context of the work we're doing now with the community.
And when Jacob is talking about here was what he means, Farmville, Virginia. And let me just start on in terms of where our university is located. We are Longwood University, and we are liberal arts founded in 1839. We are located in Farmville, Virginia, with another college called Hampton-Sydney College that you see the seal of up on the screen, which makes Farmville, well, educationally distinctive by being the first 2-college town in the United States of America. And Farmville is literally located in the heart of Virginia. So if you saw Virginia kind of as a dartboard and you were going for the perfect score in the middle, and if you were going for that perfect score, well, that perfect score would be Farmville. We're approximately 9,000 people, so not very large in size. Although we're not very large in population size, we do have a very large figure who lived here and who came from here, Barbara Johns. Barbara Johns was the young lady who at 15 led a school walkout out of Moton High School. It was an all-Black high school here in Farmville, Virginia, to protest the unequal facilities and resources that, well, that she and her colleagues were not getting compared to the white high school. And so she did it in such a way that not only did she lead her colleagues out for that protest, but she did it in such a way that she was able to protect her teachers so that they wouldn't be fired. She made it so they didn't know what she was doing. And what's pretty amazing to us is that she was a key social innovator and social entrepreneurship in Farmville, Virginia, when literally you could lose your life. And her walkout, not many people know this. I didn't know this till I came here. It is the foundation case for Board versus Brown of education. So when you're talking about Farmville, Virginia, and you're talking about Longwood, and now that high school is memorialized on our college grounds, just at the southern tip of campus. A key social entrepreneur for the United States came from here, stood up here, and made a difference. And so that's who we are. And that's where we came from. When Jacob was saying about the Native Americans and the here. The here is Farmville, Virginia, Longwood University. Now, cultivation side, I told you we're breaking up into 4 major sections. Well, we like to think that when we're building our framework of these Cormier change makers, that we are looking at it from the foundational concept, the value, the virtue, the verb of compassion. And so we took the method for building compassion that I write about in my book called the LUCA method, LUCA, as you see up on your screen. And basically, real quick, the L stands for taking the time and building the skills to listen to learn. Because we live in a society, as many of us know, where most people listen to reply. And if we listen to learn, I think we get to the U part, the understand to know how others see the problem or how others see the issue. Because maybe the way you see something is not the way another person or a group of people see it. And if we could understand to know how we can help others achieve what they see as an issue in a way that they believe is important for overcoming, not the way we believe, I believe then we can also get to the C. We can connect to capabilities because maybe we do not have the resources at our personal disposal that can help them achieve the alleviation or the accomplishment of whatever goal, the suffering, the alleviating the suffering or the accomplishment of the goal. And I believe that maybe we can connect them to others who do. And then we can, once we do that, we can help them act on that to solve it. Just as a real quick example, as college professors, Professor Dolans and I have had to deal with mental health issues. And so when you're listening to a student, you really got to put everything aside and listen to what they're going through. Understand to know, maybe, do you have an answer? And a lot of times we realize by listening and understanding, we understand that we know that we do not have the tools to do it. So we walk them to the mental health center. That means connecting them to those capabilities. Well, you got to get out there. Just don't tell them where that mental health center is. Well, Jacob and I, we actually take them, act to solve that problem. We take them to that center. So basically, the LUCA method is our foundation about how we approach the overall curriculum and education here at the Cormier Honors College.
Yeah, and one of the examples, and we'll come back to this more later, about how we're actually doing these things in the curriculum is that of deep relationality, right? It comes out of this deep history of actually being relational with others, right? So all of my students are participating in writing their public narratives. So a story of self, a story of us, and a story of now. They're learning about who they are in relation to the communities they live in, the region, and the world. And then they're reading those stories to each other and learning how to listen to one another and respect someone else's story and understand. We're also really looking at social capital. So how do you understand those bridges, the linkages, and the connections that you have with others, and the power that that creates among us to really create change in the world? And then we're helping them to translate those skills into those of emotional intelligence, right? Which are linked to what employers are asking for, which are linked to success in their life.
These tensions and live within this both and sort of world, this sort of mindset in some ways.
I think I gotta mute someone. Okay, we're also really looking at how do we teach systems thinking, right? So how do we teach students to understand all the parts of a system, to break it apart, to truly understand from a human-centered perspective, and actually look at how do we tweak parts of that system to create positive feedback loops, to create positive change. We also infuse the skills of innovative thinking. So back to listening, how do we listen? How do we connect? How do we network? How do we connect two ideas that are separate and different and find new and novel knowledge in between that's just and sustainable for the future?
All right, and so now onto co-creation. We sincerely believe that knowledge comes from everyone, right? So our programming is not just from the faculty, it's not just from the community, but it's also from students. And we believe that we can learn from each other. And so we build that into the Cormier Honors College. And we're just gonna go through some quick examples in the curriculum and things we do outside in the community to demonstrate that. And then if you wanted to go a little deeper in the Q&A, we're definitely leaving time for Q&A. So just as the first example on the Whole Prize. The Whole Prize is an international competition that is sponsored by the United Nations and the Clinton Foundation, where groups of students, 3 or 4 students in each group, would address a socioeconomic problem that's happening all across the world. And you compete in a kind of Shark Tank type of competition where the different groups come up with different ideas to address that problem. Well, what's really cool about the whole prize in our perspective is that it has to be led. The director of the whole prize of each campus, and that is what has happened here, is actually an undergraduate student who's leading other undergraduate students, where Professor Dolans and I really are to act as guides or questions. We actually ask more questions than anything else. And so the whole prize is this really cool way of getting students to think about a kind of everyday issue that's in front of them from different perspectives, and then figuring out a way how they can address it in an innovative, creative approach.
And another example of this is us acting as social innovators on our own, was this problem that how do you get this into the curriculum of any student, whether they're a nursing major, an education major, or a science major? So we're working with the core curriculum to create courses at the freshman level, which will be our Citizen 110 courses, which will be linked to the Holt Prize and these other initiatives. We're creating courses at the mid-level, which are looking at how do you understand things from different perspectives, from different peoples, from different places, different ideas. And then finally, a symposium course called Lancer. Lancer is our mascot, Lancer Launchpad, where students will launch these ideas out into the world. And the course will be about doing rather than writing or the traditional academic thing. So they're actually going out right now and doing these things.
Speaking of doing, right, when you're talking honors projects, we have a big service component as part of the Cormier Honors College. And so one of the things that happened over just this winter break was that a lot of the service projects that we had lined up were obviously canceled because of COVID. Well, we like to empower our students. And so these projects are really, like we like to say, by students, for students, and through students. And so a number of our honors students went to nearby parks, Twin Lakes and Bear Creek, and provided manpower, woman power, right, to beautify, to build, to reconstruct different areas of those parks that needed help. And what they found, what they came back with was pretty amazing. In one of the parks, they found a locker in a kind of rundown shed where they discovered that one of the very first African-American park rangers started. And so now we are actually building around our leadership retreat this coming fall around what the students found in their projects, about making sure that that park ranger is acknowledged and that there's a place where people can go to learn about that park ranger and what he did. And that all came from students and their honors service project, going out during winter break, literally living in tents during the winter so that they can actually help those parks. So that's just one example of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and really this co-creation goes beyond our own campus. We believe to create real social change, you have to work with others from different places as well. So we're currently collaborating with 3 universities in the region of Southern Virginia and 1 university in Holland. So I want to throw it out to the people in the audience. If you have a project at your university or with your organization, we would be thrilled with current technology to get our students involved internationally or nationally to really work on problems together and to look at problems from different angles and to learn from one another and co-create these things.
And not just internationally, but I've actually been asked to be part of the Farmville Area Chamber of Commerce. There are a specific program called the Farmville Leadership Program, where it's like the Super Hadron Collider. They take different people from different disciplines and different areas of the community. So from economics, from education K through 12, to higher education, to non-governmental organizations, you name it, the library, and they throw us together and they have us come up with ways, kind of fresh eyes about maybe issues or problems that are happening in the local community. And we have to come up with projects where we think we can help address that issue or that problem. And one of the projects that's coming out is that we're thinking we should also create this type of leadership program for middle schoolers and high schoolers. So we've involved the K through 12 schools in the area on that possibility, because we think if students know, what the local government does, what a tax department does, what the water department does, and why it's important for just their turning on their faucet, they might become more civically engaged in our local community, which would make us stronger because it would make us question more. So from international to local leadership, we're trying to weave it all together.
And I just want to add one more thing, and I don't want to catch my boss off guard, but this is an example of my boss, our dean, actually leading and doing this work in the community and allowing us as faculty to have that space and that room to be civic scholars as well as traditional academic scholars.
Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, so this is just one example. We're not going to talk through this, but this is an example of this web that has been woven around youth entrepreneurship all the way up to postgraduate and community entrepreneurship. So we've created this network and this web where our students have been involved, where the community has been involved. That includes 3 universities, all the community colleges in the region, a bunch of community and civic organizations. It involves churches. So really not limiting ourselves and being open to how does this look when you learn with people and you work with people rather than kind of the other way around. And so these emergent things that are happening, and they're just so exciting. There's so much energy.
Speaking of energy, I just wanted to highlight something on this, is that Jacob, I don't know about many of you, but some of the universities I was at before, just trying to team teach with somebody in your own university was an issue with contracts and other things like that. Well, here, Jacob is team teaching with another professor at another university on social entrepreneurship, and it's going on without a hitch. Matter of fact, it's building better and stronger ties for us. So I think there are always ways we can find to make things happen. I think too many times we find excuses not to do something. And Jacob is one of those professors who always finds a way to make something happen. All right, Jacob, you're up next as well.
Great. So we really wanted to talk, right? So we have this co-creation, and we have all of these ideas, and we have our ears open, and we're listening to these resident energies, right? So how do these things catalyze into action?
Right. And one of the things we wanted to do is that when you see our logo and you see our motto or hear our motto, we want them to all interact and to link up together. So it creates that vision that we're talking about, right? This weaving, this compassion, right? And how do we catalyze that? Well, in a simple logo and motto. So our motto, and let me start with the motto first, but if you look at our logo that's up there, and you can see that there are 4 C's. Well, this is the motto of the 4 C's. Cormier, that left C, is where cognition, the C facing down, unites with compassion to build community. So not only do we do it in our curriculum, we want the students to know when you step into the Cormier Honors College and you see that logo, that's the first thing that comes to your mind, is that we're weaving together what we do in the classroom as well as what we do outside the classroom, and not just on the university grounds, but in the community, in the local Farmville community, but also in the community they go back to. We want them to see that woven fabric every single time they turn around, literally and figuratively. And how do we do that in a curriculum? Again, we have enhancements. And basically enhancement is a fancy way of moving a regular course up to an honors level. And the way you do that is you have to weave in 2 or more modes of inquiry. We have 4 modes. Let me just go quickly through them. 1 is textual analysis. The other is math science. The 3rd is art music. And the 4th is historical, social, political. And so if you're teaching a math course, right, and an honor student comes to you and they say they want to enhance that course, you're already doing the math side of math science mode of inquiry. All we ask is that you pick another one with the student so that they're coming at an issue from another discipline, from another way of questioning. And so as a quick example, if you're in math, how cool would it be to weave in the art and music, right, and do fractals? And matter of fact, we've had a student do that. They went into a regular honors course, looked at fractals, and what did they eventually get their PhD in? Fractals. And so it opens up paths that maybe students in certain disciplines wouldn't even think about opening up. So have that innovative, creative atmosphere in everything you do, including what some students would consider an enhancement, a kind of one-off.
Yeah, and so really finally recognizing those emergent strings, right? So when you get students in these classes, they get together, they have really good ideas. They're working on companies of outdoor clothing that fit women's bodies better and are giving grants to women to go on adventures. They're working on prototypes to help make firefighters safer during COVID. They're writing children's books with anti-racist language. So they're really actually doing and putting these things out into the world. And then as faculty, we're kind of looking at this and we're saying, okay, like what courses can we create that will support these structures? Our students and community members are really showing us our needs in this area. So being open to this emergence, and really working with all of the key stakeholders to create academic curriculum that fits in with that. And finally, and we want to open this up for dialogue after this, we really want to create these positive feedback loops in this system of higher education, community, and the global worldview, where students learn to be co-creators of just and sustainable communities, where they then contribute to those communities and create vibrant and just and livable places. And then that feeds back into increased access to education, to having great students, and then helps to define the curriculum in better ways and more emergent ways that are aligned with the times and the problems and the challenges of the world.
And so, right, the transformation of higher education was happening before COVID. COVID just sped up everything. And so I think the universities and places of education of all different types, we need to find ways to weave the town and gown communities together that are not just innovative, but also unique to place. Thank you very much. And we'll be open to questions and dialogue. Any questions, anything in the chat?
Not yet. Questions, ideas, wanting to connect to solve global problems with students from Virginia. We're open to anything.
Someone knows, oh, I know Farmville, Michelle had written. Is there something? Yeah, go ahead.
For higher ed folks too, we're happy to talk about the inner workings and the logistics that might have been too boring to have in the presentation of how we're actually making these things happen within an institution.
One of the things I was excited about coming here was that the university was allowing me to bring the value of compassion as a key component into higher education and learning. I sincerely believe that if compassion was more prevalent in the world, our world must be a much better world. And so to be able to do it on an everyday basis with not just with students, but also faculty is something that, you know, makes me excited to, well, it doesn't seem like work, but go to work every single day. But we're happy to kind of weave out or iron out any wrinkles or nuances that you may have.
I would like to ask, you were talking about this kind of exercise that your students have to do about who they are in relation with their community. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use an example out of Harvard University that was used a lot in historical community organizing initiatives. So it asks these 3 questions, and I can put a link in the session afterwards, I think. But it asks the first question, who are you at a deeper level, right? So this like fire, this call inside of you. And then it really asks you to delve into who your community is, who are those people from all parts of the community? What is your relationality with that in relation to your fire? And then third question is really the now, right? Why is this urgent? Why can't it sit on a shelf for 5 years? Like, why do you have to take who you are and the place you live and act upon it? So usually it's a drafted paper. It's about 2 to 3 pages, which is quite hard for them to keep it that small. But then we sit and we workshop it. This year we did it on Zoom, but we read them face to face and we talk about how do you respect someone's story? How do you listen to someone's story respectfully? And then how do you create those relational networks that grow into social capital, right? So this is a skill I want them to be going out and doing with other professors, with community leaders, with kids, you know, like how do we build these relational networks that then when something comes up that's a challenge, we have that network built.
Thank you.
Looks like we have a question, Dr. Cook, about enhancement. Does the enhancement have cost implications on the students in the college? How is it managed?
Really good question. No, there are no costs to the students. And so what we are doing, what I have done in terms of enhancement here is I'll slide over some money to the professor to cover the extra work that might be involved in an honors enhancement. But that wasn't even done before I got here. They just did it. Many of the professors just do it on their own. So we're just coming up with a way to figure out everything from a Cormier Honors College mug for professors, right? Trying to figure out a way to compensate the professors in a way, because we want them to take the extra time to go deep with the students, but there are no costs to the students. Great question. It's managed. Oh, how is it managed? It's managed through the Honors College. So the student has to initiate it. They have to come up with an idea with the professor, and the professor then has to okay it, and they put in the application to us. And if we have any questions, we reach back to the student. So we put all the work on the student in terms of coming up with the idea, because we want them to lean into it. We want them to want to do something that takes something outside the discipline they're in and bring it in. Because once they do that, they're not being forced to do it. They're wanting to do it. And so no cost to the student. And it kind of, what we're trying to do is harness their passion, where they want to go. So they do a deeper dive. And usually what happens is they do a much deeper project than I think they thought they were going to do, and that we expected them to do. And the professors are usually, they sit back and it's literally just a guide. So no cost and no extra, really not a lot of extra work on the professor's part, except for questioning.
Yeah, and I think it's really to get the students to be open and to learn, to love learning.
You're welcome. Great questions. Anything else?
Well, I guess if there's no other questions, then we'll close the session. I think, Michelle, is that what we should do? Just close out on the Zoom link?
I think so.
Cool. And so our contact info is up, and we're really excited and open to collaborating with anyone or hearing of resources. And so thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.